Welcome everybody to our service learning project presentations. The overall goal of these service learning projects is captured in this title, Culturally Responsive Classrooms Celebrating Diversity and Fostering Engagement. Welcome to our class, Education 5P24, Socially and Culturally Situated Learning, Spring 2021, and I will be talking about our class more in the coming slides. Just a few housekeeping issues. I want to make sure that everybody is aware that this session is video recorded and the recording will be disseminated in public for educational purposes later on. During presentation time, please mute yourself and turn off your cameras so that the focus and the attention and the quality of the recording is high. During discussion time, please use the emotion function should you like to participate in the discussion or communicate non-verbal messages. Just to make sure that our class is organized and our recording is of high quality. This is an overview of our session today. I'm going to start by sharing a few words of acknowledgements. Then opening remarks. Maybe we can take a 5-minute break after that. Then we are going to go ahead and go to our service learning project presentations. Basically, we have a guidebook to share with everybody. We're going to start with chapter 2, followed by chapter 1, followed by chapter 2. Then we're going to have a 5-minute break and then resume with our guidebook presentations with chapter 3 and chapter 4. Then another 5-minute break, then we're going to open it for discussions. So with this, I would like to go now and say a few words of acknowledgements. I'd like to thank our guests from the Faculty of Education at Brock University. I see that Mr. William is with us. Thank you so much, William, for your cooperation in our class. We very much appreciate your support. And any other guests who are here present with us in our presentation today. We appreciate your attendance and support. I want to also thank our community partner from Appleby College, Mr. Mike Morse, who is the Vice President of this school, Mrs. Jennifer Coles, who is the Director of Inclusivity at the school, and Ms. Jenny Eccles, who is also a co-director of Inclusivity at Appleby College. They collaborated with us, they cultivated a partnership between us and their school community, and that was great. I want to thank Mr. Mohammed Wahid, who is the Asian native artist who collaborated with our class in developing really wonderful designs. And I also want to thank him for his work ethics. He finished all the projects on time, so much appreciated. And I'm going to share with the class some of his designs later on. The service learning project in this class was facilitated by a grant from the Experiential Education Department. I thank Ms. Sandy Hu, who is the Associate Director of this department, and also I thank Ms. Liz Kirk, who was the coordinator of experiential education at that time. Now, I would love to share with us some designs developed by Mr. Mohammed Wahid. So this design here captured the first chapter on philosophical roots of Asian thinking. The other one here captured some factors affecting students when they transit from their native countries into North American education institutions. And this one here captured different types of arts in Asian countries. This design here is meant to capture the cover of our guidebook, and this one is meant to cover the second chapter on critical thinking And we will be discussing these designs more later in the discussion today. A big note of thank you to my class for their hard work, for their commitment. Also, I want to share with everybody that when I introduced this experiential learning component into my class, I introduced it as an option, but all of my class were enthusiastic about it, and everybody expressed willingness to participate in it. So I'm going to mention their first names: E, Ravneet, Sumit, Roxin, Yuchen, Satara, Quinn, Rashida Abdullah, Dafinj, Gazo, Sayida Sumrin, and Hinal. In this class, we have 12 scholars, and these scholars are representing 5 countries: China, India, Iran, Saudi Arabia, and Singapore. Thank you so much, class. Now, I would like to provide an overview of this course. So this is Education 5P24, which is socially and culturally situated learning. This class is provided in the master program in the Faculty of Education. And I'm going to read out the calendar description, which I put here between 2 inverted commas. So the overall goal of this class is examination of contemporary theoretical and methodological perspectives that emphasize the social construction of learning and knowing. How these perspectives influence the ways that we understand the content and the process of learning in individual and group settings. The way I organize our class, it has different activities, including multiple types of readings, essential readings, supplementary readings, recommended readings, activities such as mini lectures by myself, small and group discussions with the class, reading seminars, reflections, guest speaker sessions. Now, I would like to provide some context for the experiential learning component in our class. It's important that we clearly understand what do we mean by service learning, because there is some confusion about service learning and community service. So the way service learning is defined in our class in this time is defined as an experiential pedagogy. So experiential pedagogy that intentionally, it takes a lot of planning, it takes a lot of cultivating relationships, finding resources to support the expenses that are required in this service learning project. And the goal here is to connect our course content with community service so that each improves the others. So it's not only about enhancing the student learning, it's not only about making a positive contribution in the community. Really what it means is that everybody in this partnership should get something, should benefit. And I will be talking more about the benefits in the coming slides. Reflection, reciprocity, democracy, and respect are all fundamental concepts in ideal service learning courses. And here I say ideal because the quality of service learning varies in different courses, but ideally those concepts should be there. Academic service learning is one way to achieve the scholarship of engagement. So there are different types of scholarship, more known, such as the scholarship of discovery about research and publications. There is a scholarship of teaching and learning that investigate what constitutes effective teaching and learning. And there is this scholar, Ernest Boyer, in 1990 and 1996, urged the scholarly community to think about making connections between academics and the public, because I think most of us would agree that there is disconnect about academics and public purposes, and this is exactly what I have tried to do in this course, is to connect our discussions in the classroom to real world issues. And I'm going to talk a little bit more about this in the coming slide. So the major goal of this experiential learning component is that I wanted to help my class, my students, my scholars to apply their learning in the class to provide practical suggestions for current challenges facing educators, specifically in managing increasing diversity in schools. With the goal that by doing this, we are supporting the development of multicultural education. Basically, what we did, we developed a guidebook for educators, and this guidebook is informed by our community partner, by our Asian artists, and every activity, every material in our course. We are hoping that this guidebook becomes an educational resource to highlight aspects of the Asian culture. There are different myths and a lot of myths about the Asian culture. So we meant our guidebook to highlight aspects of the Asian culture in order to raise awareness and correct misunderstanding. We also wanted our guidebook is to provide recommendations for best practice. How can we engage our learners from Asian backgrounds in a better way? We are hoping that this guidebook will be of value to teacher education departments and programs. We also hope that this guidebook will be of value to programming about faculty development and also trainings on diversity and inclusion. So these are the major goals of integrating service learning into our class. But I also had tacit benefits. Tacit benefits means hidden benefits, means the benefits that I have not shared with my class, but I'm going to share it in public right now. So I meant to achieve several goals through this community service learning component for my students, for my class that I have not shared, that I will be sharing right now. So I wanted to engage them in a meaningful project that relates to them on a personal level, because as I mentioned earlier, all my scholars in this class are from Asian backgrounds. So I thought it's going to be a meaningful project to them since they are native to this culture. I was also hoping to help them appreciate the challenges facing educators in multicultural classrooms, because our scholars, most of them are here in order to stay, in order maybe they can become teachers or administrators in educational institutions. So just to appreciate that it is not easy to teach, it's not easy to work effectively in multicultural classrooms. And this is something that I really like, is to provide professional development opportunities for my students beyond the specific goals of this class. So I'm hoping that they have developed several academic, social, and personal skills. And I think that our scholars will be talking more about this in their presentations. I also have some tacit benefits for our partnering school and educators in general beyond Appleby College. So I was hoping to provide them with opportunities to raise questions of interest pertaining to multiculturalism. Oftentimes we find resistance from educators to promote multiculturalism, and we don't get enough time to ask ourselves why. And I'm thinking that the reason why some people may be resistant or reluctant to embrace multiculturalism is simply that they don't know how to do that, and they are a little bit shy to ask questions about it. So I wanted to provide a safe space for them to raise those questions. And that's why whenever we had guests from our partnering school, I was keen, and also my scholars were keen on asking them what questions that you have, what things that you would like us to work on, with the hope that by doing this, they will be more committed to embracing multiculturalism in their educational institutions. And also, I wanted them to appreciate the role of university in advancing theory and practice. So the hope is that even though our partnership with Appleby College is coming to close, but then maybe they can extend their partnership with future classes at Brock University and different types of higher education institutions. For Brock University, I also, our class is consistent with the mission and vision of Brock University, so I wanted to provide an opportunity to advance the experiential education pillar of Brock's strategic plan. I wanted to help advance the civic mission of the university. I wanted Brock University to champion application of research on best practice for engaging international students. That colleagues and myself have written on this a little bit, the important question of how to engage our international students and help them achieve optimum learning experiences. And I think that engaging international students in service learning and different types of experiential education is a good and effective way of engaging our international students. So now I will hand it to our scholars to start their presentations. Just for everybody to know, it is a 5-minute presentation per team. So each team is expected to mention their names and their country of origins. They are expected to share their interest in the topic of their chapter, how their chapter is organized, and just share a few highlights from their recommendations. And maybe they can also share some reflections on their overall experience in this service learning project. With this, I am going to invite everybody to have a 5-minute break so that we can provide an opportunity for the first group to upload and share their presentation. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. So please, everybody, you can go for a break. Right now, I see it is 8:36. If we are back at 8:41, that would be great. Thank you. Hello, everybody. Leaders of chapter 1, are you ready?
Yeah, we are ready.
Okay, so I will turn off my camera and please go on and share your presentation.
Okay. In our group, Eugene will take care of the presentation.
Yeah, I'll share it now. So can you see it?
Yeah, but not full screen. You
Yeah.
can make it full
Yeah.
screen. Okay, so let's get started. So, good morning, class. We are so excited to be the first group to present. To introduce ourselves, my name is Quỳnh Nguyễn and I'm from Vietnam.
Yeah, my name is Yuchen Liao and I'm from China.
And my name is Hinal Jala and I'm from India.
So, our chapter focuses on the philosophical and cultural foundations that shape East Asian education. The reason that we are interested in this topic because we want to deliver a message to the world where being white is still a privilege, yes to difference and no to inferiority, using Confucius theories to respond to Western misperception of East Asian students. And that's also our chapter title. As you can see on the screen, this scale is the one that we developed to build up our chapter. As such, we start with Western perspectives of East Asian learners Then we will address it using a balanced view before fully explain it using Confucius series. So let's get started with Hinel.
Hello everyone. In our chapter, we first included Western perspective of Asian student. There is a huge difference between Asian and Western culture, and sometimes this difference considered as an inferiority. There are many misbelief and misperception about Asian student. The first one is about learning style. Asian student considered as a rote learner, that they only focus on memorizing and repeating the content without deep understanding and knowledge about meaning. However, it is not true. Sometimes deep learning also require memorization, and Asian students are not at all rote learners. Second one is about the communication style. Asian students are more silent in Western classroom and choose not to be involved in classroom debate. However, in Western most engaging classroom, this perceived as negatively that they are don't have ability to engage in the classroom. And third one is about the relationship between teacher and student. In Asian culture, there is a huge gap between teacher and student, that they are more obedient. In Asia, there is a more teacher-centered teaching style. They are more of spoon-feeding learner, that the all content and material are handed over to them by teacher. However, in Western, more independent learning, they perceive as an inability to learn independently, and that is not true. And last one is about the critical thinking. There is a belief that Asian students lack critical thinking. However, we have particular chapter explaining this in detail. All these misperceptions is a result of neocolonialism, that Eastern world's unintended influence creating this misbelief about East Asian students, that there are particular evaluation criteria that Western educators used on Asian students that produce this misperception about Asian students. So we just want to say that yes, we are different, but no, we are not inferior. In our next section, Queen explain more about the cultural difference between Western and Asian world. Thank you.
Okay, so thank you, Hinel, for your first section. So in my part, the objective is to challenge the Western views of Asian students using a balanced view by comparing the cultural differences underpinning the characteristics of East Asian and Western learners. This part provides insight on how students learn differently and helps clear misleading beliefs that some Western teachers might hold about Asian students' orientation towards learning. The difference between those two learning traditions is highlighted through three main aspects: learning purpose and style, the role of teacher, and communication preferences, and based on the work of Socrates and Confucius, two influential thinkers in the West and the East. So for the first aspect, learning purpose and style. In the West, the purpose of learning is to discover the world. Therefore, the universe is the object of the learning process, whereas the East use knowledge as a means to perfect oneself. So yourself is the object of the learning. To that end, while the West adores Socratic method of using dialogue to discover the truth or knowledge, the East utilize intensive practices such as memorization and repetition just to develop understanding. For the second aspect, the role of teacher. Perhaps a teacher can be imagined as a midwife, facilitating students to give birth to their true knowledge because they believe that knowledge is something innate. So they also see themselves as equal peers to their students, and that view allowed them to create a democratic learning environment where every voice is equally counted and debates are highly encouraged. By contrast, since social order matters in the East, Asian students look up to their teachers as a master of knowledge, a moral model to resemble, and a guiding North Star that orients them towards the ending goal of self-perfecting rather than an oppressor. The last aspect that I want to highlight is the communication preferences. We believe that the correct emphasis on oral communication originates from Socrates' dialogistic teaching method in which learning occurs. As such, eloquent speakers use words as one of the most powerful tools to acquire knowledge and manifest intelligence. Therefore, those who master the art of speaking are believed to outsmart those without that desirable skill in the West. On the other hand, the Asians assess both students' thinking and morality through their choice of words. So you can imagine that whatever comes out of your mouth represents your virtue, right? So that's why the East Asian students consciously mind their words before voicing up, just to ensure the dignity and sincerity in any speech. You know, Lao Tzu, a prominent Chinese cultural and historical figure, once said, "Those who understand are not talkers, and talkers don't understand." That saying once again reinforces the idea that the power of silence is nothing less than a good talk. So, the reluctance to public speaking of East Asian students should not be misinterpreted as disengagement. Rather, it simply means that they need more time to arrange their thoughts before flushing them out, because according to their culture, actions speak louder than words. So to sum up, it's really important to call for the rewrite of Western descriptions of non-Western learners so that the shaping power of the Western culture in people's perceptions of others are no longer overrated. And neo-colonialism is far less of a concern in the process of globalization. So to do that, in the next section, our Eugene will conduct a deep analysis of Confucius theories that shape the way East Asians think, learn, live, and behave.
Yeah, thanks, Hinao and Coin. So in my part, I dive into the cultural and philosophical foundation of East Asia. So first, we explored Confucianism based on Confucius lectures, and I borrowed the concept of three edges: harmony, humanism, and hierarchy from STAR in 2012. So, but we clarified some details. So here are some key points. First, harmony. This is the ultimate goal of Confucianism, and it is a pragmatic value. So someone perceive it as seek a middle way, but actually it is not accurate. It is seeking optimization for the whole system, not just for the actor itself. And humanism, it means gain virtues through education. And hierarchy, we also want to highlight that this is not, the metaphor of hierarchy is not like a pyramid, but it is more like a galaxy that people in the society have different positions. But actually, Confucius promotes mutual responsibility as an equal relationship. So based on these three H's, we come up with this model, 3R's. It means three relationships: knowledge and learning relations, practicing and thinking relations, and teacher-student relations. As you can see that this metaphor has a lot of implications. So here are the key points, but I cannot elaborate them here due to the time limitation. If you are interested, please read our chapter. So here I just want to mention some key points. For example, the stars, bigger star refers to teacher, while smaller stars refer to students. So this metaphor actually is connect with three edges. And we also come up with a loop that is opposite with the West, leading to a longer distance from knowledge to thinking, because the purpose of learning in the West is reconstruct nature, while in the East is adapt nature. And we want to highlight that this metaphor actually is kind of like an iceberg. So on the top is the explicit activities like memorizing, but it has contained a big part of implicit activities, for example, self-reflection. And I use the dashed line to refer to there is a flexible boundary between these explicit activities and implicit activities. So we use this metaphor to convey the message that memorizing is just the start, but far from the end. East Asia has a whole learning system, while a big part of it is under the water and neglected by the West. And overall, so we made an effort in our chapter to dive deeply into the cultural and philosophical foundation, providing a general picture of East Asian students. So our position is clearly shown in our title that we are different, but we are not inferior. But notably, what we describe is an overarching orientation rather than personal routines. And we are not intended to label or stereotype East Asian learners, and strongly advocate that educators should see every East Asian student individually. So based on our study, we give our recommendations. We gave 5 recommendations here. So we elaborate them in our chapter, and here are the key points. And we want to highlight that separately, 1 or 2 of these suggestions may exist in a multicultural classroom, but meanwhile, Western perspectives of students from other cultures remain unchanged. So we believe that these 5 recommendations must work together. And by doing so, teachers could better engage East Asian students in a foreign country to a great extent. And all of our suggestions are concerned around the key message of not letting one culture dominate the other, and thus calling for the promotion of equality in intercultural education that we probably all advocate as educators. So we want to say that this is the best learning experience because we can immediately witness the translation of our theoretical findings into practical and handy guidebook. So this makes us feel that those knowledge are not just empty talks, and we are not artificial masters who only care about words. And also during the process, we know ourselves and our culture better. So we want to say thank you, Nevin, for all of this. And that's all. This is our presentation. Thank you.
Yeah. So we hope that the last thing that we want to say that we hope that in this chapter we bring to the surface a lot of Asian cultural values that are not always visible to the rest of the world. And so really appreciate, thank you, Nevin, for giving us this opportunity.
And thank you so much, everybody, for your hard work. I appreciate it. Gwen, Yuchin, and Hinol. Thanks so much. Much appreciated. Thank you. So if the leaders of the second chapter on critical thinking are ready, then we can move to their presentation.
Yeah.
Okay, wonderful. So Yuchin, if I may request that you please turn off your camera and mute yourself. Thank you. And I will do the same thing.
Can you see my screen now?
Coming, Satara?
Sorry, I couldn't hear you. Can you see my screen now?
Not yet.
Is it okay now?
I think it's coming, Satara. So just give it a few seconds.
Okay.
Yes, we can.
Okay. Is it now in full screen?
It is full screen. Great job. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you so much, everybody, and welcome to chapter 2, which title is Reconceptualization of the Assessment and Critical Thinking. I am Satara and I'm originally from Iran. Actually, our chapter is divided into 3 sections and I have covered the section 1, which the title is The Culture of Assessment in Asian Context. Actually, here in this chapter, we mainly focus on the assessment because of the importance of assessment in education. Assessment could help teachers understand how learning materials is delivered successfully to the learners. Also, using appropriate assessment methods could promote students' achievement and increase their motivation. Here in my section, I have covered these topics. That the first one is moral assessment, which talks that in Asia, actually in the Asia, the teachers they actually devote considerable part of their assessment process to the morality, and we will discuss that when morality is highly important in the Asian assessment, it is not much emphasized on critical thinking. The next part is about the parenting style, that parents in Asian context are highly sensitive to their children's education, and usually they have high expectation for their children that would limit their creativity. And we in this part we will discuss that in Asia, students are not encouraged and not assessed based on their creativity. The next part is educational needs versus social needs and interests, which talks that in Asia, the main emphasis is on lessons and educated related topics, and there is not enough attention to other interests that the child might have. Based on my section, I come up with 3 suggestions for future teacher. The first one is integrating moral education and critical thinking together, because the main actually attention in Asia is based on morality. So the best approach would be to combining both moral education and critical thinking together to achieve more comprehensive results. The next one is the suggestion for improving creativity in Asian students, which is using scaffolding techniques and more learner-centered methods to actually to pave the way for Asian students to cultivate their creativity. The next one is actually a suggestion for paying attention to the interests of Asian students, because following their interest could help Asian students to reach their fullness of their life and be more motivated in their education. Generally, we think that it is a really big challenge for teachers to know about their students' background. Actually, teachers in all around the world have students that come from culturally diverse background. So we hope this chapter would provide an opportunity for Western teachers to know about Asian students and actually provide a culturally inclusive classroom and differentiate their assessment methods based on their Asian culture to provide a safe environment for Asian students to learn more effectively. Yeah, my part is finished, and Grace will continue with section 2.
Okay, thank you, Satara.
Grace, just please, I want to mute myself.
Okay, hello everyone. I'm Dan Fengshen, and I'm from China. Now I'm going to introduce my part. My section is about assessment and its possible influences on Asian students. And the rationale for choosing this topic is that I want to deeply understand the significant influences of assessment and to find out some principles for teachers to consider in teaching process in order to create a positive learning environment for Asian students. As for my reflections on this project and the course, I think this course and the project promote me to critically think about phenomena in a dialectical way instead of following the previous statements or arguments presented by other scholars. I think it is quite important in learning, teaching, and conducting research. Besides, the social and cultural factors are important for teachers working in a diverse cultural context. They enable teachers to deeply understand students from different cultures which is the premise of implementing some teaching strategies, such as differentiated instruction, or in other words, individualized instruction. In a big picture, social and cultural factors influence the objectives of education that have impact on the school's environment, teaching materials and methods, and moral values, and so on. Therefore, I have realized the significance of culture and society by the course and project. And here I want to thank you for all of your help and contribution from Dr. Nevin, William, and my group members, Setara and Racing. The next slide is the organization of my section. Initially, I will examine the cultural and social influences on assessment. And I found that assessment is influenced by social ideologies, political and economic factors. And then is the influences of assessment on teaching, learning, and social justice. In this part, I will take some examples conducted in Asian and Western regions by other scholars to support my arguments and deduce findings. In the part of learning, I will take rote learning as an example, as well as the debates on rote learning and critical thinking. And then I try to clarify the significant roles of actors such as students, teachers, and schools, which can help to improve or modify the negative influences of assessment system. By analyzing the roles of students, teachers, and schools, I could provide suggestions in accordance with different perspectives. And all the recommendations are mainly based on the research in this part. For example, as for teachers, they could find a balance between policies and cultures in the schools. And I will take the research conducted in 2 middle schools in Hong Kong and England to support this statement. As for students, I will present their creative skills, such as critical thinking, can also contribute to the reform of assessment, which could be connected with the last section, critical thinking, by my group member, Rui Xin. In the last part, I will emphasize that all the participators, such as principals, teachers, parents, and students, should form a shared consensus to link the assessment and learning so that both the school and family can gradually accept a new assessment culture, so that teachers can also design and fulfill the objectives of the curriculum and implement teaching strategies without conflicting information from different actors, such as students and teachers. Thank you, that's all.
Hi everyone, my name is Rui Xin. I'm from China, and building on the philosophical foundation and the assessment culture that have been explored by Danfeng and Setara and our first group, I'm going to touch a controversial topic, which is the assessment of critical thinking of Asian students. And I'm going to start with a quote from Atkins, which arguing that critical thinking is cultural thinking. Thus, I have suggested that critical thinking may well be in the nature of a social practice, discoverable if not clearly self-evident only to those brought up in a cultural milieu in which it operates, however tacitly as a socially valued norm. So this is a long-standing stereotype about the critical thinking ability of Asian students. And in this part, I'm going to challenge this stereotype. To understand the reasons leading to the stereotype, we will first need to make a clarification of the term critical thinking, which is traditionally interpreted from behaviors, including overt questioning and debating in the classroom. While in 2005, Pascal
Pasquarella and Terenzilli, two scholars extended the various definition of critical thinking into cognitive perspective, which included identifying assumptions behind an argument, recognizing important relationships, making correct references from data, drawing conclusions from the information or data provided, interpreting the merits of the conclusion based on available information, and evaluating the credibility of a statement and its sources, and finally making self-correction. So from the definition of these two scholars in 2005, we can therefore conclude that critical thinking involves a decision-making process from data collection to drawing a conclusion based on the credible data. So the redefinition of this term has very much changed what has traditionally been laid on the emphasis of the oral presentation skills that many Western instructors use to define the ability of critical thinking of Asian students. And with the purpose of addressing the claim of Asian students' lack of critical thinking, two scholars from New Zealand, Fisher and Ward, in 2010, they conducted empirical research through the comparison of skill sets between Asian and Western students. The research was conducted in 110 New Zealand European students and 52 Asian students. And through this research, they have some finding, like the author concluded that New Zealand European students outperformed Asian students on these two measuring instruments. And yet, the reason for them to outperform the Asian students is very much lies on the language proficiency. And the author further explained the conclusion by arguing that if a critical thinking task requires information processing in a language, students who are proficient in that particular language will be able to spare more cognitive capacity in the working memory and think critically. So in this next slide, I'm going to further discuss upon this redefinition of critical thinking, we can see that the language proficiency partly explain why Asian students is quiet in the classroom. And this is one perspective. In a second perspective, from the cultural and social perspective, scholar Edmund in 2013 argued that Asian students' silence in the classroom is because of the culture. It's not because of their ability. I think this topic has been covered by our group member in chapter 1 about why Asian students is silent in classroom, because in the Asian culture, silence is valued both by the teacher and by the students, because influenced by the Confucian and Buddhist and Taoist practice, they tend to think silence is a side of deep thinking, is a good way and a good path to lead to high-level thinking. So from the redefinition of the term critical thinking, and also the research by the research by New Zealand professors, we can conclude that the stereotype of Asian students' lack of critical thinking is derived from the perception of Western superiority and further enhanced by cultural differences between East and the West that accounted for the contrast of silent Asian students and verbally active Western students in the classroom. Through redefining the term, we should rethink and address our approach to identify and assess Asian students' critical thinking skill from the perspective of behavior to cognitive skills. Further research on the assessment of critical thinking under the context also has revealed the language proficiency and also the cultural value of Asian countries. has been the main reasons lead to the perception or lead to the practice of Asian students' silence in the classroom. Thank you.
Thank you so much, leaders of Chapter 2, Satara, Dafinj, and Roxine. Thanks so much. I also want to acknowledge the presence of guests from outside of Brock, Martin Knight and Said Wali. Thanks so much for joining us. Now, I would love to invite everybody to take a 5-minute break and please return back. So now I think it's 9:13. If we can please return back at 9:18, that would be great. Enjoy your break. Thank you. Welcome back, everybody. I am wondering if leaders of Chapter 3 are there. I can see Sayeda, Gazo, and E. Are you here? Wonderful. So I'm going to hand it over to you, and please, a reminder to everybody to please switch off your camera and mute yourself, please. Thank you.
Hello, good morning, everyone, and welcome to our presentation. So we will be presenting on our chapter number 3, that is on social and cultural factors affecting student academic engagement. My name is Saida Samreen Wali. I'm from India, born and raised in Saudi Arabia.
I'm Desu Verma, and I'm also from India.
My name is Yi, and I'm from China.
As Audre Lorde said, it is not our differences that divide us. It is our inability to recognize, accept, and celebrate those differences. So we, the authors of this chapter, believe that the differences must be recognized, accepted, and celebrated. And it is even more true in multicultural societies like Canada and the classrooms. We believe that it is important to acknowledge the socio-cultural factors, and this belief comes from the underlying problem that is prevalent in the classrooms in Western countries. Some of the studies show that the student population in the classrooms is very diverse. It's multicultural, but comparatively, the teaching staff is dominantly white, or the educators are mostly Western. Now, this is a problem if you see it from a cultural lens, because the cultures of the teachers are different from the cultures of the students. We, in this chapter, are going to base the chapter on Bronfenbrenner's ecological theory, because from this theory, we can understand that a child's development is mostly dependent on the immediate environment, and the factors that are present in the immediate environment affect the child's development. We will be focusing on 2 of the levels discussed by Bronfenbrenner. The first is the microsystem that consists of factors like parents, teachers, schools. And the second is mesosystem that talks mostly about the relationships between the immediate factors in the environment, for example, the parent-teacher relationships.
So first, we are going to talk about the social factors. First, the socioeconomic background of the parents as well as the child affects his accessibility to resources. He is not able to afford basic items such as quality food or buy worthy academic resources to prepare well for exams. Also, he's not able to sometimes afford a house in a good locality. So it is not just linked to academic performance, but also linked to multiple interacting systems. So living in a good locality, or the racial and ethnic backgrounds, leads to lack of completely support from family, leads to stress. Then challenges faced during transition, when he transitions from a completely different country, new environment, new norms, new climate. There's so many things to adjust, like feeling of an outsider, the difficulty to cope up with currency difference, and lack of support because there are no friends and immediate family. And then the biggest shift is the education, where from completely teacher-centered approach, the education system shifts to student-centered approach. So it causes a lot of stress and it takes time for them to adjust. And then the biggest challenge for them is getting over the language barrier. Sometimes it is difficult outside the classroom where they're not able to mix well and mostly portrayed as rude just because they are not able to interact with the local community. And in classes, they have difficulty to read the accents of teachers because they're completely different, engage in class participation activities. It causes a lot of turmoil in their head. And then the Asian students always have a baggage of parental expectations because there the future of the child or the success is rated from the performance or how many scores he's getting in the class. So they always have the pressure to score well in the classes, in the test. And then Asian parents always lay stress on academic performance, but not on extracurricular performance. Whereas in Western culture, we observe that parents give freedom to the child whether they want to go for engineering or whether they want to opt for extracurricular activities such as arts or music or any other field like that. But Asian parents are strict. They want their children to focus on activities such as only that can get them professionally better career like engineers, doctors, etc. But for Western parents, it is not like that. They also promote their students to professionally pursue extracurricular activities.
So just like social factors affect the students' academic performance, there are some cultural factors as well that play an important role. First are the parenting styles. Now, there are many studies and various studies show that there are so many types of parenting styles, but the one that is relevant to the Asian cultures is the authoritarian parenting style. And it is most commonly known for its high demandingness. That is, the parents have high expectations, as Gesu mentioned, from the children regarding the academic performance. And there is also this cultural belief of educational importance. Now, taking China as example, we know that Chinese philosophical roots are in Confucius beliefs. So Confucius believes that the most high occupation in rank is the occupation of the scholars because of the wisdom they carry, and this wisdom comes from education. So this belief of the educational importance is still prevalent in the Asian families. And this also leads to this high demandingness in the parents regarding their children's performance. Now, secondly, the parent-teacher relationships also affect the students' academic learning or performance. The parental involvement are of two types. It can be at home and at the schools. Now, from Bourdieu's cultural capital theory, we can understand that there are two factors. One is the habitus and the other is field. In normal terms, habitus can be explained as the cultural dispositions that the people have of their own, and the field is the culture of the broader, the dominant culture. Now, in Asian perspective, you can imagine that the Asian culture is the habitus of the people, and the field is the Western culture. Now here there is a conflict between habitus and field. So usually the Asian parents that do not involve that much into the schools or the school activities, they are actually feeling left out because there is the congruence between the habitus and the field is missing because of the cultural difference. So, and oftentimes this leads to the misconceptions between the teachers and the parents. For example, the teachers may consider the parents as disinterested in their children's education just because they are not taking involvement or they are not taking part in the school activities. And the parents, on the other hand, must be feeling that they are the knowledgeable inferiors and the teachers are the knowledgeable superiors, which keeps them from taking active participation in the classrooms. And with this and with the discussion of these factors in this guidebook, we are looking to provide clarifications and to challenge these misconceptions.
Thank you for Saida and Gaisu. to elaborate the previous two parts. And here is the third section. In this section, we found there are three main important factors that affect students' learning motivation. The first one is the socio-economic factors, and it is closely related to the parents' or family's background or status. Actually, it is similar to some content of Gaisu, and we found a study. It states that in modern society, education has become the intermediary of intergeneration inheritance or mobility, and it is also the main way of social reproduction, which means the students from the families with wealth can get access to more educational resources. And we also found that the students from the families with limited finance are more motivated to gain upward mobility through academic performance, and they may more eager to change their status quo than students with better living conditions. And they believe that if they study harder and perform better in school, it will be helpful for them to enter a higher class in the future. And with regard to the competition factor, I believe competition is a topic that Asian students cannot avoid. Take China as an example. China implement the exam-oriented education, and there is numerous exam in the whole learning experience, and that would definitely bring some pressure to the students, but it also triggers the students' motivation to compete with others and gain more academic performance. The third one is the traditional social and cultural concepts factor. The first thing I want to discuss is about the cultural value difference between the Eastern and the Western. In Eastern countries, they believe in the collectivism. However, the Western believe in the individualism. From this aspect, we can see that the Asian students are more inclined to cooperate learning, which is usually related to this kind of value influence of Confucian culture and society's attention to groups rather than individuals. And the students believe that knowledge is not only the knowledge itself, but also other dimensions of life, including society and morals. And they should gain some other good qualities, such as hard work and perseverance in the learning process. And that's all.
After discussing some of the social and cultural factors and the factors that lead to students' motivations, we would like to suggest some recommendations for the teachers so that they can provide an inclusive classroom where they are culturally responsive to the Asian students' needs and expectations. So first, we think that the teachers should try to build an inclusive classroom community, and this can be done by creating a safe environment for the students where they get to know the students well and the students get to know each other well and as well as the teachers. So they share their ideas, or they are able to interact more openly. And after learning about the social and cultural factors, we hope that the teachers will be able to design their lessons in such a way that it will be suitable for the Asian learners.
Next suggestion is that teachers don on the role of empathetic communicators, so it brings a sense of belongingness to the Asian students, and they can share their struggles with someone who they actually think is going to support them. And next suggestion is parental counseling, because as we know that Asian students carry a baggage of parental expectations in the class. So it would be really better if the teachers understand that this student can perform better in arts field rather than in engineering, and they communicate that message to the parents, it will help the parents understand and reduce the baggage of pressure from the child.
And the next recommendation is to provide appropriate face-to-face communication. That is because we found a phenomenon that because of the pressure in high school education, some Asian students, after some Asian students enter the universities, they may not treat their study or learning very seriously, and they would be lazy for some degree. And we suppose that it is helpful that if the teachers can provide some communication with the students and help them to find their problem and correct them their manner in time. And the next one is to organize corresponding activities. And that is because the different cultural value influence the students' learning philosophy and motivation. If the teachers can provide some corresponding activities to let the Eastern students to practice their educational philosophy and motivation, and that would be helpful. And that's all.
So to conclude our presentation, we would like to share some thoughts. That is, first, we are very, very grateful to Dr. Naveen for providing us this opportunity to take part in this service learning project so that we can contribute something to the diverse community that we are now a part of. And this also gives an opportunity to share our personal experiences with which we can, help the educators to understand the Asian cultural background and some of the factors that affect the students' academic learning or academic performance, so that they can help the students in their classrooms. And also by discussing or by adding this chapter in this guidebook, we feel that and we hope that it helps the educators to respond to the needs and expectations of the Asian students to create a culturally responsive classroom. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sayeda, Gazo, and E. I'm also very happy that you include this chapter in our guidebook, because oftentimes people think about the students in terms of academics, and we tend to forget that we are whole people. So academics are very important, but also other factors affect how we act and behave, affect our academic performance in the classroom. So much appreciated. Thank you so much. Now, thank you. Now I am going to invite the leaders of Chapter 4 to give their presentations. So the floor is yours. Thank you.
Hi everyone, are you able to see my slide?
Yes.
Okay.
But not in full screen. Yeah, now.
All right. Yeah, so good morning everyone. My name is Rashida and I'm from Singapore. In these past couple of weeks, I had the honor of working with my international classmates. So ladies, please introduce yourself.
Hello everyone, I'm Ramneet Kaur and I'm from India.
Hello everyone, I am Sumit Kaur and I am from India.
So without further ado, let me begin the presentation. Now to begin with, our inspiration in writing this chapter is informed by our lived experiences as visible minorities who are familiar with acts of marginalization in the curriculum and in the social context and learning in a standardized education system. Interestingly, the writing of this chapter took place amidst an increasing crimes against those whose cultural orientation stood out because they were different, and these events took place back home in our countries and in Canada. It left us feeling indignant and hurt, but at the same time, we were touched and hopeful by the love and support that was being rendered by those outside the communities in Canada. But still, we felt that being part of this service learning project was an instinctive reaction for us because we are living in an increasingly globalized classroom, and the need, therefore, to promote a more inclusive, culturally relevant pedagogy that honors diversity and nurtures empathetic understanding becomes far more pressing. So how do we overcome challenges? So we felt that to circumvent differences, the best place is to look for a common ground. And that's when we thought of art, because we believe that art is a form of expression that exists in every culture, that makes it a universal language. And further, art beautifully informs us of the culture, the history, and the strength of its people. It doesn't just inspire us to ask philosophical questions, but more importantly, it makes us feel. And my teammates and I believe that feelings are what unite us as humans, and that's what we need to be constantly be reminded of. Now, in our opinion, one of the challenges of international students is coping with issues pertaining to transitioning into a new place. Some of us face issues of language barriers more than others, and at times we are confronted with moments of uncertainties as we begin to deconstruct our own preconceived notions where we make sense of things around us. And we believe that being in transition is also a universal human experience that students in the classroom experience during their growing years. So what more, international students? So we felt that through art is able to empower them to caption their silences, their enthusiasms, when they could not find a common spoken language to express themselves. So if art is being personified, this is what perhaps it would say. I am my very own poetry. I have a beautiful mind because I'm imperfect in the way I see myself, in the way I see the world. I have a beautiful soul because I love without prejudice, in the way I fall, in the way I rise again. So if you see me, know that you are not alone, for you will see you, beautiful and incomplete. So now I will request for my partner Sumit to elaborate further on this chapter. Sumit, please.
Thank you, Rashida. So when I talk about the further part, we'll be talking about the chapter organization and key ideas. Now, in this chapter, we'll be talking about the differentiated instruction. When I talk differentiated instruction means that it is celebration differences in diverse cultures. It means that we use different methods of teaching and learning in a diverse classroom, and it also promotes inclusivity. Further, in the chapter, we'll be talking about pedagogical approaches using art forms. We'll be focusing on the three art forms, that is visual arts, performing arts, and language arts. Visual arts means it includes paintings, drawings, sculptures. You can see one example on the left of the screen, which is a batik painting, which is drawn by our very own Rashida's daughter, that is Zepira Abdul Rauf. And this is a beautiful painting drawn which shows unity in diversity. Further, we'll be elaborating in the chapter about performing arts, which includes theater, dance, music, role play, how we can use these different modes of arts and have an inclusive classroom. We'll also be discussing about language arts that includes writing of poems, novels, short stories, and in a creative and an innovative way. Next, Next, when I talk about voices and transitioning. Now, over here, again, we have few pictures. These are again examples or lived experiences from Rashida's experience with her students. Over here, when I talk about the first picture, we see a baby completely like on bed with all the uh, mask and everything in the hospital. Now, this is where, based off a live experience of a student, to respect the privacy of the child, we call him as Strength. Strength depicted his struggle to come closer with his baby sister's demise amidst his parents' bitter divorce. Divorce is a growing concern among the Malay Muslim community in Singapore. Strength was also transitioning to a secondary school that year. This is how drawing this picture and writing an article or a short story about it made Rashida know about the situation of the child. Next, when I talk about the second picture, this is an artwork by an international student in Singapore who has depicted how we can have differentiations over here and different time differences. The third picture depicts alone. Now, over here again, this is based on the experience of losing, the experience of a child whom we name as Forgive, and it is his experience of losing his grandmother, whom he was very close to, and how his challenges to forgive a family member. Over here, we also have a small poem that is Neighbors by Alfian Sat during Hari Raya. She knows on my conscience, I knock on her door and I give her cakes. She says she likes them and gives me sweets with gelatin inside. I throw them away. Poor woman doesn't know how to make cakes. I request Ravneet to continue with the presentation further.
Thank you, Sumi. So next part is about recommendation part. Here are a few recommendations for teachers and school administration that are based on art culture and inclusivity of art into the pedagogy. First recommendation is that teachers should have the knowledge about the background history of every student's custom, beliefs, or socioeconomic status. As Canadian classroom sizes are not too large, so we believe that teachers are able to visit every student's home to get information about the culture and history of their family and their traditional values. In this way, teachers can adopt various pedagogical approaches accordingly in the classroom, according to the needs and interest of the students. Second recommendation is that school administration should allocate required resources to the teachers to teach effectively in the multicultural classroom. For example, adopting differentiated instruction in the classroom requires well-planned lessons and various resources according to the needs of students. As in the classroom, there are students who has different learning styles and different cultural backgrounds. So it is the responsibility of school administration to allocate various resources to the teachers. The third one is parental support. School administration should provide parents proper support and guidance about different pedagogical approaches included in the school curriculum. School can host various sessions or awareness camps to explain the purpose of adopting culturally inclusive pedagogy in the curriculum to honor the diversity of all the students. Last but not the least, teachers should be patient with their students of diverse backgrounds and with different learning needs. It is the responsibility of teachers to provide opportunities to each student to talk about their respective cultural and traditional values in front of the class. This can be done by promoting communication and dialogue among the peers. So at the end, I would like to share our own experience while writing about the art and culture chapter. We have learned about the importance of art and culture in the diverse classroom and how a teacher can integrate art and culture into the learning process through various pedagogical approaches such as differentiated instruction, role play, and so on. We get an opportunity to be sensitive about each other's differences based on culture and language. We also learn few words from each other's language. Moreover, Dr. Niveen has set up various meetings with the respected community members to understand the important issues faced by teachers or administration in Canadian multicultural classroom. So I would like to thank Dr. Niveen for providing us such a useful and wonderful experience. Also, I would like to thank our respected guest, our AAT William, and my classmates to take part in this presentation. Thank you.
Shukriya.
Thank you.
And terima kasih, everyone.
Thank you so much, Rashida. Thank you, Sumit and Ravneet. That was great. I hope that everybody has enjoyed the service learning presentations. I am really so proud of my class. And just as a concluding thought, I want to share with the community here that incorporating an experiential learning component in class does take a lot more time and energy and thought in planning the syllabus, communicating, cultivating the partnership with our community partners, seeking funding, and the communication with so many stakeholders inside Brook and outside Brook, but seeing how my students embraced the project and worked really hard for it, it makes me feel very, very rewarded, and my time and my energy are very well invested. Again, thank you so much for Mr. William Ankoma. Actually, William is not a guest. William is a valued member of our class. So thanks so much, William, for making this effort to attend this class session. And also, I want to reiterate my thanks to our guests from outside Brook. Again, Martin Knight and Sayed Wali. It's very, very important with this kind of classes that we are joined by community members outside of the academic institution. With this, thank you so much, everybody. Really, your work is much appreciated. And that is the end of our recorded session. Thank you.